It's great to be in the SEC. Thank you for tuning in to the SEC Recap Podcast. I am your host, Ben Warren. This is our Game of the Week episode, Florida at Georgia, the world's largest outdoor cocktail party. Which team will take home the coveted Okefenokee Oar in the War for the Oar? We'll find out. By the way, you can find the accompanying article for this podcast. The link will be in the description. You can also find everything on our website at secrecap.com. If you're listening in podcast form, please go to Apple or Spotify, leave us a rating and review. If you're listening on YouTube, smash that thumbs up, sub to the channel. We've got at least 2 pods coming at you every single week. As always, we're available anywhere you prefer to chug your podcasts. Let's take a look at the matchup. The 4-3 Florida Gators will meet the 7-0 undefeated number 1 in the country Georgia Bulldogs in Jacksonville for this classic rivalry matchup we know as the world's largest outdoor cocktail party. The game kicks off at 3:30 p.m. Eastern Time on CBS. Since 1933, with the exception of a couple years, 94 and 95, this rivalry has been played in Jacksonville, Florida. Every nook, every cranny around the Jaguar Stadium will be filled with tailgaters, cocktails, and revelry. The first meeting in this rivalry was 1904 in Macon, Georgia. The Bulldogs won 54-0. However, Florida does not include the 1904 game in their win-loss series record, whereas Georgia does. So Georgia leads the series all-time 54-44-2, but if you ask the Gators, they'll tell you it's 53-54-2. Bulldogs may own the all-time series, but the Gators lay claim to the most recent longest win streak at 7 from 1990 to 1996. That was when a guy known as the Old Ball Coach, aka Steve Spurrier, showed up in Gainesville. From 1990 to 2001, Spurrier would be named SEC Coach of the Year 5 times, win 6 SEC championships, play for 2 national championships, and win one of those in 1996. Now Georgia, the most dominant it's been in recent history, owns 4 of the last 5 meetings since 2017, and the number 1 Bulldogs will be growling to snatch another one from the Gators, who are somewhat belly up under first-year head coach Billy Napier. Is there anything Florida can do to stifle Georgia and show the SEC they will not go gentle into that good swamp? Let's find out. Let's take a look at the offense. The Gators are coming into this game with the number 56 scoring offense in the country. Gators averaging 31.5 points per game, 429 yards per game, about 7.2 yards a play, 60 plays a game, and 35.5 minutes in time of possession. Gators like to play a little bit slower and control the clock. In their passing game, they're averaging about 217 yards a game. They've got 7 total touchdowns on the season. And in their run game, they're averaging 212 yards a game and 20 total touchdowns. So in yardage, they're very balanced on offense, but clearly they like to pound the ball in at the goal line. 20 rushing touchdowns to 7 passing touchdowns on the season. They are responsible for 7 interceptions, and they've lost 3 out of 7 fumbles. So some light turnover issues there, especially in the passing game. Gators need to be really careful against a good Georgia defense. Meanwhile, Georgia coming in with the number 8 scoring offense in the country, an elite offense. Bulldogs averaging 41.5 points a game, over 500 yards, 526 to be exact. 7.2 yards a play, but they are averaging 72 plays a game compared to the Gators' 60. They also love to control the clock and are about even in time of possession with the Gators at 35.5, just under 35.5. Georgia a little more pass happy. They are averaging 329 yards a game. They've got 11 passing touchdowns on the season. Meanwhile, in the run game, close to 200 yards. They've got 24 rushing touchdowns on the season. So same story there. They like to move the ball downfield with the pass, but when they get on the goal line, they just like to run it down your throat. Only one interception on the year, but they do have some fumbles. They've lost 5 out of 9. Overall, we've got the number 56 offense against the number 8 offense in the country. The advantage here has to go to Georgia. Flip it on over to the defensive side. Florida has the number 81 scoring defense in the country. They're giving up 28 points a game, about 429 yards. They are allowing 244 yards through the air compared to 185 on the ground. Gators defense giving up 8 passing touchdowns and 15 rushing touchdowns on the year. Scrappy defense, though. They've got 6 interceptions and 7 fumble recoveries on the year. This is going to be tough compared to one of the best defenses in the country for a second year. Georgia, number 2 in the country in scoring defense. They are averaging 9.1 points allowed and just 247 yards a game. That is just going to be a tough matchup for anyone. Their passing defense is giving up 163 yards a game. They've only given up 4 passing touchdowns on the year, but if you think that's good, check out their run defense, 83 yards a game. They've given up 1 rushing touchdown. 1 rushing touchdown on the year. Same defense has collected 6 interceptions and recovered 3 fumbles. Advantage here in the defensive side, or on the defensive side, has to go to Georgia yet again. Some key injuries, not a lot coming out of Florida. Osiris Torrance, offensive line, had a lower body injury headed into the LSU game. He sat out that game. They are coming off a bye week, but to the best of my knowledge, he is still questionable. One of the better offensive linemen there. Georgia, man, Georgia has had a slew of defensive injuries, it seems like, this year. It all kind of started with Jalen Carter, defensive tackle, questionable currently, but not likely that he'll be back for this game. They also have A.D. Mitchell out, who's a wide receiver. Kendall Milton, one of their running backs. Georgia, though, pretty solid at the running back position. That's not going to hurt them too much. Recently, though, Dan Jackson, starting safety, is going to be out with the rest of the season with a foot injury. Look, I know Georgia has kind of been known for their defensive depth, but to have this many injuries appear, no team wants that, especially when you've still got 4, 5, maybe 6 games left to go when you're talking postseason and playoff potential. Key players for Florida, no surprise, it's going to be quarterback Anthony Richardson. He needs to have the game of his life to give the Gators a chance. For Georgia, no one particular player. They've got tons of talent there, particularly on the offensive and defensive side of the ball, but the offense just needs to play consistently. They need steady production from their run game so they don't have to show too much ahead of this SEC East showdown with Tennessee in a couple weeks. And then I'll say the Georgia linebackers. They've given up a high completion percentage over the middle of the field. That could be a good day for Florida's wide receivers and tight ends. Anthony Richardson won't need to hit them deep. Just short routes there, short slants over the middle of the field. Linebackers need to be really solid that they're not letting Florida dink and dunk on them there. Or Florida can make this a really long game for Georgia. I know Georgia would really like to probably rest some of their number ones in the fourth quarter. Florida might have something to say about that. So what's this game going to come down to? Both teams want to run the ball dominantly, and I think Georgia is better equipped to run on Florida's defense than Florida is to run on Georgia's. Both teams have great, solid running backs. But when you're talking about running on one of the stingiest rush defenses in the country, Florida's going to have their work cut out for them. Like I said, Georgia has only allowed a single rushing touchdown on the season. That means either Florida's offensive line is going to have to dominate the line of scrimmage, or Anthony Richardson is going to have to put the ball through the air effectively. Gators should take a page out of Missouri's playbook from week 5, that defensive slugfest there up in Columbia, MO. Their defense brought a lot of pressures. They forced Stetson Bennett to get the ball out quickly on dink and dunks and checkdowns, basically limiting big plays over the top. They kept Georgia out of the end zone all the way until the fourth quarter. So if the Gators can get in the backfield, be disruptive, limit those big plays, I think they have a chance to play a closer game at least through 2 or 3 quarters. For Georgia, look, man, they don't really need to do anything differently. Everything Georgia's doing is working. I know people like to point to Kent State and they like to point to that Missouri game and go, well, Georgia's vulnerable, Georgia's vulnerable. Well, yeah, they can be with the right game plan, but I don't think anybody truly believes that Kent State or Missouri was in line to upset Georgia. I don't know that anybody was really banking on that outcome, even though we did see Georgia get exploited somewhat. When it comes down to those final minutes of the fourth quarter, it's all about your dudes, and Georgia just has the dudes. All Georgia needs to do is keep their dudes healthy, play a clean game, and contain Anthony Richardson. ESPN's FPI has Georgia favored at a whopping 92.8% chance to win versus Florida at a 7.2% chance to win. The spread favors Georgia at minus 22.5. That's a big line or big spread. And the money line also favors them at minus 2,400. So it's very clear that nobody on the Vegas side thinks that Florida has much of a chance. I'm inclined to agree, but this over-under is sitting at 56.5 at the time I'm recording this. The team totals for Florida are 17.4 and Georgia 37.3. I'm actually going to lean toward the over in this matchup, the over 56.5. So who's going to take home that Okefenokee Oar this Saturday? No surprises here. I like Georgia to win outright. They've got more talent. They're a better team. Florida is still rebuilding under Billy Napier. They'll get it together eventually. But to pull off the upset versus this Georgia team would just take a monumental effort. I can see Georgia hitting that 37 team total, but I think 22.5 is a few too many to give Florida. I believe a late score by Florida can get the Gators to cover that spread and hit the over on that 56.5. All you need is 57. I think 37-20 would do it. Remember Tennessee, where Florida had those late scores and 2 onside kicks, where Tennessee fans were just going, oh boy, here we go again. If you're Billy Napier and the Florida Gators, what do you have to lose in this game? You're 1-3 in conference. You know the old saying, everything in the kitchen sink? Well, I don't think the Gators should stop at the kitchen sink. I think you throw everything you've got at Georgia here. You're playing with house money. You've got nothing to lose. They're not competing for the East this year. Play spoiler maker. Do everything you can. Throw everything in the playbook at them. And I think they might do that. I just don't think it's going to be enough for the Gators to pull off the upset. So I am taking Georgia 37, Florida 20 in this year's outdoor cocktail party war for the Oar. My other Week 9 predictions, Arkansas at Auburn. Look, bonus episode for you. I'm going to have another featured game of the week. Arkansas has had a bad streak of luck against Auburn, and Auburn has won 8 of the last 10. But I think this year could be different for the Arkansas Razorbacks. These two teams match up really, really well. So check out that other Game of the Week episode for my breakdown and prediction. Then we have Missouri at number 25, South Carolina. Look, South Carolina's offense isn't good, but Missouri's is worse. The Tigers just can't finish drives with points. Give me the Gamecocks in this one with some weird Beamer score like 26-20. We're going to have number 15, Ole Miss at Texas A&M. A weird one here. Ole Miss minus 2.5 on the road. Is this the mispricing of the year? Or do the odds makers know something the rest of us don't? Nothing about Texas A&M inspires confidence right now. Suspended 3 players over the weekend for a locker room incident in South Carolina. Jimbo Fisher's losing the media narrative every time he gets on a press conference and talks. It's just word salad. Their on-field play makes a Shakespearean tragedy looks like sunshine and rainbows. Look, I will take Ole Miss in this game, but I'm undecided on the final score yet. I'm going to need a couple more days to decide what's going on with this spread. And then finally, perhaps the biggest game of the weekend, number 19 Kentucky at number 3 Tennessee. You may be asking yourself, why the hell isn't this your game of the week? Well, my goal for the Game of the Week episodes was to actually cover every team in the SEC at least once. Inadvertently, I've already picked 3 Tennessee games as my Game of the Week. Those games happen to be the Florida game, the LSU game, and the Alabama game. Look, when you have top 10 ranked matchups or even top 25 ranked matchups, it's just hard to stay away. Spoiler alert, we're probably going to have another top 5 showdown next weekend when Tennessee travels to Athens to play Georgia. So there's just a high likelihood we'll end up with a 4th Game of the Week episode where Tennessee is involved. Anyway, is there a chance Kentucky can win this game? Sure. Absolutely there is. There's always a chance. But I would never bet on that happening versus this Tennessee team. You know, Alabama was a top 5 defense until they played Tennessee. I think the probability that the Vols blow the doors off Kentucky is statistically more likely. I mean, just see the LSU game. The LSU was a 2.5-point favorite at home. Tennessee strolled in there and blew the doors off them 40-17. I'll take Tennessee in this game 37-27, but honestly, it could be lower or higher scoring than that. I know Kentucky's hanging their hat on that defense. That's a really good defense. But when it comes to scoring, Kentucky's offensive line has been atrocious. Tennessee's offensive line has been really good. And I just don't think there's any way that Kentucky's going to be able to keep up when it comes to the points in this game. But check this out. If you think they can, if you're a Kentucky fan, if you think your Wildcats are going to pull off the upset in Neyland, or if you're Tennessee and you're thinking, no, there's no way, I've got some really awesome merch up for sale right now. If you go to bonfire.com/store/SEC recap, I've got beer barrel apparel up for sale. We've got the white and blue Kentucky Beer Barrel Champs shirts. We've got the white on orange Tennessee Beer Barrel Champ shirts. And since Tennessee's breaking out the dark mode unis for this game, I even created some special dark mode designs with the pocket logo Beer Barrel Champs and the Power T in orange and white on the back. Go check that out. They're really cool. First 25 people who order can get 10% off with promo code BEER22. Again, that's bonfire.com/store/SEC recap. Link will be in the description. That's going to do it for this Game of the Week episode. Guys, thank you so much for listening. Remember to like, share, subscribe, rate, review, get notified for new episodes each and every week. Have a great week. Have a great weekend. And it's great to be in the SEC right here on the SEC Recap.